Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast, where our mission is to get more people that look like us participating in the real estate industry.
Whether you're a seasoned real estate pro or just starting out, there's something for everyone here.
I'm Anita Wong.
And I'm Tiffany Lee.
We invite experts to not just talk about real estate, but also about our unique identity as Asian women and the cultural values that shape who we are as investors.
Now let's get on with the show.
The following is an important legal disclosure regarding the content of the SARE Ladies podcast. Entertainment purposes only. The content provided in all episodes of the SARE Ladies podcast, including discussions, opinions, interviews, and any other type of content, is intended solely for entertainment purposes. It should not be considered professional, financial, legal, or any other type of advice. No professional advice. The hosts, guests, and producers of the SARE Ladies podcast are not professional advisors. The content provided should not be relied upon for making any personal, financial, or business decisions. We strongly encourage our listeners to seek advice from qualified professionals before making any decisions based on the content of this podcast. No liability. The creators, hosts, and producers of the SARE Ladies podcast shall not be liable for any errors or omissions in the content provided, nor for any actions taken by any listener based on the information provided in the podcast. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. No endorsement of investments. While we may discuss a range of topics, including investments and financial strategies, such discussions are for illustrative and entertainment purposes only. The SARE Ladies podcast does not endorse or recommend any specific investments or financial products. Consult professionals. We strongly advise our listeners to consult with a qualified professional for advice tailored to their personal circumstances before making any investment or financial decisions. No association. There is no association between SARE Ladies and a guest speaker or professional. By listening to the SARE Ladies podcast, you acknowledge and agree to this disclaimer and understand that the content provided is not intended to replace professional advice.
Now on to the show. Welcome everyone to today's featured speaker, our very good friend from Midas Wealth, KELVERN Chen. Everyone
Hello.
say hi to KELVERN. KELVERN is a great friend of Sare's. He works at Midas Wealth with Rick who you guys may remember, spoke with us a few weeks ago. I think, Anita, was about teaching your kids about financial literacy. Was that the topic back then? Yep. So today, KELVERN has come with a new spin on financial planning, and it's financial planning for the savvy SARE lady. So we figured this would be fun. We stereotyped a lot of people. Full disclaimer, when we see something like super inappropriate, like how I labeled each phase of life, that wasn't KELVERN, that was me. So I want to just don't think badly of KELVERN. That was Tiffany's sixth sense of humor. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to KELVERN. And KELVERN, let me know when you want me to move over to the next slide. Just say Tiff, kick it.
Sure.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I was about to say the full disclaimer is actually two parts. The first one is this is a very, very general principle of financial planning. It does not constitute to anybody personally. And also, if let's say you have anything that's very personal you want to ask, I would suggest not to ask in a public space. You and I can actually do a one-on-one, and I can have my assistants to schedule 30 minutes so that I can answer anybody questions. And given that this is the SARE podcast, I'll be able to do the 30-minute no charge consultation so that we can actually have the one-on-one to protect your privacy. But any general questions, always at the end of it, I'd love to answer all of you. And the second disclaimer is that I definitely did not put any of some of the verbiage is Tiffany, but I like her wacky sense of humor. Yes. All right. So today's financial planning for savvy SARE ladies. I chit chat with Anita and Tiffany, and obviously the first thing is I am Chinese descendant and I speak Cantonese and Mandarin. So the first thing I was gonna say to everybody is Happy New Year. And one thing that I remember when I was growing up is that in Cantonese, some of you may or may not know, translate back in English, which is right here, is Fu Bat Ko Sam Toi, meaning wealth does not last beyond 3 generations. And what happened is that is really the first generation usually is the hardest working generation, accumulate all the wealth, and then because they have so much grit, so much preservations, and then it's they just build massive wealth. And then the next generation is getting easier and easier. And then the third generation, what happened in the past is that they've got to become hey, you know what? I'm a trust fund baby. I don't need to do anything. And then they spend it all. And then it's that's the reason why in the old Chinese generation, usually wealth does not last beyond 3 generations. And then the second thing that Tiffany and I and Anita also go over is that, hey, our old Chinese mentality, I'm not sure about you, but I definitely happened in my family, is that don't invest anything. Cash is king. Don't put money in the bank. Leave it in the mattress. If let's say that's something that you're heard of, I just want to let you know you're not alone. I heard this so many times during my 10 years of financial planning. That's a very, very common advice given by our older generation. But that's just something that I want to share with everybody on this team, that these are the things that happened to me, and these are some of my experience as well. All right, so Tiffany, any questions from you or Anita before I go over? All right, so
Thanks, Annie, for the laughter.
So the first thing I want to say is that please do not think that this is just about, hey, how can I get rich? How can I build wealth? It's really, I want to make this in a sense that wealth is one thing, but I just want to make sure that in my philosophy, I want to share with you all, is that I think that making money is just a mean to your goal, a mean to your goal. The goal itself, at the end of the day, no matter how millions or how billions you have, at the end of the day, if you cannot find your own happiness, and happiness itself, everybody has a different meaning towards it, then I don't think that that's really a successful living. So I want everybody to keep that in mind. That's actually also my philosophy when it comes to money. At the end of it, wealth is just a mean towards your goal of happiness. So what we're trying to break down right here is for somebody who recently started off the college, for SARE Ladies, to somebody who is just started off working and start to understand the career from 20 to 30s. What kind of mindset? And this is also based on my own personal experience and my wife's personal experience. And just to give you some chat, I've been in the financial planning for more than 10 years. I'm a certified financial planner. My wife, her name is Selina Lee, and she is also a CFP. She's also a certified financial planner. And we have been together for more than a decade, and we know each other prior to that. So we have a lot of struggles because both of us come from a family of nothing. And I have been struggling a lot during my college years. And this is something that my wife and I both seen, and we put some thoughts into it. And this is something that we really want our viewers for today to understand. So you will see that on the left side, the yellow is more like a life stage considerations. And then the green part is the big picture for financial strategies and tactics. Think about more of a intrinsic value and also an actual strategy. So there's a lot incorporating that. But one of the things that Tiffany and I talk about and Anita talked about yesterday is like, hey, when you are at college, what are you thinking, right? As a young ladies. So Tiffany, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, when you're an Asian baby girl, you're thinking about your financial career path. And this is when you're like age 18 to 30. And you're dating a lot, choosing a life partner, trying to figure out what you like and your alignment of values. Ooh, excuse me. And you know what kind of lifestyle you want to live so that you can start planning for it and laying the fundamentals. And you're also, you know, fresh out of school. Most times you are starting a W-2 job out of school, but you know, some people that are, you know, more bold and braver than others will jump into the entrepreneurship line. But whatever you choose, there is a tactical line to take, which is where KELVERN comes in. Take it away, KELVERN.
Yeah. So I think that the first and most important thing when you're like in your teenage years, in your 20s and 30s, for me, at the very minimum, is to really understand your fundamental values, and that comes to personal life and also the worldview. A lot of time when people don't really understand their personal value, their core value, and what they expect out of themselves, and life values where their goals want to be in life, and more importantly, things that surround around them with is the world value. A lot of time people will have less tendencies to find happiness. Because one, they may or may not have standard of how they want their life to be in the coming 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And two, they may or may not have the actual life value GPS for you to like from point A to point B, because you don't even know where you are right now. So that to me, I think that having understanding your own fundamental values is very, very important. And in Asian, we actually call it the Samgun, Sanguan, which is the personal values. Now, having said that, what I really think based on my personal experience is really the 5 things that I gone over together with my wife. So the number 1 is having a basic saving and investment philosophy. I can tell you that right after college, I don't even know what's Roth IRA. Okay, I can't even spell Roth. I can't even know what the difference between money market and also basic savings. I don't even know what investment stock looks like when I was in my college years, right? So having all those basic savings philosophy, investment philosophy, be a little bit more curious. That is something that I would tell people, and don't even try to think about, hey, should I go for like advanced classes and things like that? No, absolutely not. Just be open-minded and really understand like the savings philosophy, like the 50-30-20 rule. That would be a very, very basic foundation for people to get things started going. So the 50-30-20 rules is more of, I make $1,000 in a month, and that's my net. So 50% of those go to my non-negotiable, like my food, shelter, comfort. And then the 30% is for Anita's current self. She can fine and dine, travel, and things like that. But the 20% is definitely go for future Anita self. So having something as basic as that will actually get you a long way, because you start to build the habit. And then the second one is to be curious, is really understanding and keep your option open down the road, whether it's investment, career, or even you want to become an entrepreneur. Be curious, ask around, find your network. And that network of network, I can tell you that a lot of time people often overlook this, is really having a better understanding on who that you hang out with today. You might heard this before. Your first 5 people that you're closest with determine where you're going to be in your future life. It really depends on who you actually hang out with. So having to understand that some of your friends that may or may not be a good potential in the future, whether it's going to give you some sort of like a value, whether it is a very good friend or very good family, what's their value and how they views about wealth and how they views about family, is going to affect where you're going to be lending as well. So those are some of the things I would just say, be more conscious on your network. It's actually your first set of net worth. And then mentorship. And this is a very, very personal experience of mine. When I was in college, I told you guys that ladies, I told you that I don't know anything about financial planning. And it was actually a few got into a different paid internship back then. I got into some of the national securities firm, and I was actually looking to understand all these things. So one of the mentors that I had back then, his name is Hans. I know him when I was 19, and he is actually my first role model of aspiration. It is from him that he was one of the largest asset managers back then, and he's also a CFP himself, and that's where he actually inspired me to become one. I asked him, like, hey, can you tell me a little bit about what you do? Share me a little bit what was your passion, and he tell me about everything I'm telling you. I did not reinvent the wheel. I'm actually just passing it by to the next person that I've seen, and today's all of you. And one thing I say to me is that he finds joy in helping others. At the end of it, it's not about himself. It's more about passing his knowledge, and he just want to try to find and help other people that he wants to inspire. And then it just become like every week we have a conversation, and about 20 years fast forward, I still keep in touch with him. And when I pass my CFP, I tell him we actually had a beer together, we celebrated together. And yeah, so having a mentorship guide you to where you want to be, somebody who inspires you, is actually tremendously valuable. And that's something that on top is built upon your network of network. And sometimes some people also ask me, is like, Kelvern, how much should I be saving? How much should I have in my banking account at 20 years old, 25 years old, 30 years old? Everybody is different, simply because of your background, your family, and also your understanding on how to invest as early as like 5-6 years old. Those things really not standardized. Everybody's different. But on average, this is a national statistics that somebody who is in the 20 to 25, the average they have in the savings is somewhere around 5,000 to 10,000. If you're about that, high five. If you're over that, celebrate. If you're not getting somewhere close, or if you're negative, I'm gonna say that either we win or we learn. Either we win or we learn. So if let's say you're not there, time is still on your side. Learn how to get there. Don't give up. You're not behind. You are just getting started. Okay, don't get discouraged. But if let's say at 20 years old, you don't want to buy the handbag, you don't want to do anything that you want to go for a travel, in my humble opinion, I think that you should consider doing so, simply because this is a time you should be exploring other different options. Okay, we can go to the next exciting part.
So by a show of hands, how many SARE ladies here are in the age 30 to 50 range? Because I feel like that is our core demographic. I feel like we have 20 to yep, there we go. Wow, look at y'all. So y'all are mostly in the MILF SARE ladies stage. If you have kids, and you know, when you hit menopause, you know, you become an auntie. So it's the MILF to auntie range. And what are you thinking about when you're here? A lot of y'all are getting married, starting a family, have young children. Maybe you have to start planning for their college. I like Kelvern said it's a last chance for career change. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind and you're competing with other young people that might have more energy and an edge against you. That kind of made me sad. He told me that. I was like, what do you mean? That's why I put it in italics. I was like, last chance for a career change. But, you know, guys, live your life. And and the last part is, you know, you have to start considering, you know, next steps when your parents are getting older. And we know in a lot of Asian families, you know, filial piety. How do you pronounce that word? Filial piety? Piety, Kelvern?
Filiality.
You know, respecting your elders. Filial piety. It's weird spelling, guys. Kelvern, how do you say that in Cantonese? Is there a word for that? It's a Confucianism thing.
Oh, that is hard for me. I don't even know.
House. Oh, look at Annie.
Yeah.
Hey.
To learn this shit.
So those are some things that are coming to mind. But you know what? I think since most of us are in the stage, is there anything we might have left out here? Because those were the top three. Drop it in the comments as you're thinking of it. But I'm going to kick it over to Kelvern again for tactics and strategies when you have these things top of mind.
Yeah, so one thing I was going to say that this is actually the most exciting age group. And just a correction, I did not say that this is your last chance. It's a famous quote by Jack Ma. And in his quote, he actually says something along the line, and obviously I'm paraphrasing, is that in your 20s, you can try anything that you want to try because you have the ambitions, you have the time, you have the energy. When you're 30s, it's time to evaluate where you are. And if you want to pivot, this is your last chance. Once you get into the 40s, if you are the W2 workers, it's very hard for you to change industry simply because when it comes to energy, when it comes to eager to learn, you're not as competitive as a 20 years old. But if let's say think about entrepreneurship, 40 and 50 is still young. You can still do it. At the end of the day, just make sure you know exactly what your passion is and what you really, really want to consider. But understanding your each 10 years will be very, very crucial. And you should know exactly when to start and when to push harder and when it's a sense of danger zone.
Kelvern, funny note about Jack Ma. I don't know if you know this. Did you ever see that movie he made of like where he hired all those famous actors and it was just so corny? I guess that was his career change. Like he's like, once you make it, do whatever silly thing you want with your money and like do a kung fu movie with all these big actors, big Hong Kong actors. That's so ridiculous. Anyway, so I guess he always wanted to be an actor, but he had to start a big tech company first. All right, Kelvern, take it away. Sorry for the little fun fact there about Jack Ma that you just reminded me.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a fun topic. But based on this earlier, on the yellow side, life stage consideration, I mentioned one thing is that the three values, right? The personal value, the world value, and also the life value. Why I say that's important is simply because if you're thinking about getting married and starting a family, I've seen based on my 10 years of experience, a lot of time when couples get together, if let's say they do not share the three views cohesively, unfortunately, there could be a lot of fractions within the marriage, and that itself is actually going to have a lot of downside to wealth planning. Because I've seen a couple in the past that they think that everything they have together and their values are actually the same. But then once they get married, they start to share the financials and they start to think about their savings philosophy, their spending philosophy. Only then they say that, hey, you know what, I'm a YOLO, but hey, I'm worried about tomorrow and the day after or 100 years down the road. It's going to be very, very hard when it comes to money. So that's the reason why I say the fundamental values is extremely crucial, especially when you think about getting married and having a family. Last chance to career change, we discussed that. Caring for aging parents, unfortunately, is getting more and more prevailing simply because by 2030, unfortunately, most of the older generation, 2/3 of the workforce is going to retire. 2/3, meaning 1/3 is not even the workforce, is actually the up and coming workforce, and the current workforce is going to be in it. So it's going to have a lot of changes, especially when it comes to the cost of care. We're talking about the assisted living. We talk about all those nursing home, and even hiring and a nurse to come over to your personal home is going to be more and more expensive, especially after COVID. But those are some things that to consider. But on the green side itself, 30s to 50s, once again, is the time where people actually start to make money. The best analogy I can give you all is think about going to Mount Everest. 18 to 20 is more like a base camp, and the 30 to 50s, this is the time you guys you all start your goal accumulation value. You all just keep hiking and hiking upper and upper. So this is the time you all need to understand, like, hey, what's the weather going to look like? What path are we going to take to up the mountain? And that's why the cash flow management and the risk management is extremely crucial, especially for kids. God forbid you guys having any unexpected situation happen, like most of the tech companies laying off people, banks are laying off people. It is very, very important to have somewhere around 3 to 6 times of your monthly cash flow as emergency fund, just in case anything happen. Why 6 months? Simply because that time is actually help to be able to build the cushion so that you can pay off your bills. And at the same time, you're also going to be able to have that time to look for other jobs. And at the same time, making sure that when the unemployment kicks in, you have that little bit buffer room. Now, risk management itself is more crucial if, let's say, having a young children. My wife and I, we consider ourselves as a young family, simply because we have my son Aiden is turning 6, and my daughter Emma is turning 3 years old in the next month. I always tell my client and also my wife, if one day I cannot be there for the family physically, emotionally, I want to make sure I'm there for the family financially. I want to make sure that I do everything I'm supposed to do without putting her in jeopardy, and making sure that she's not stressed out and she's able to spend her time with the 2 kids and also herself, not working the double job. So that's something that I want to focus on, especially for any of y'all here has a young kids. That's going to be extremely crucial. When it comes to the investment and tax management planning, most of you understand stocks and bonds, and most of you understand real estate. Which one is better? I always ask that question. I don't know why, but for me, I think, why should we choose one or another? Why not both one and the other and more? In the realm of investment, I tell people this: there are real estate, commercial real estate, development. You can also own a business. You can do sleeping partners. You can also have private equities. You can have hedge funds. Stocks and bonds is one of them. In other words, you actually have more than 7 different avenues of diversification. You don't have to choose one or two. There's actually a lot more than that. However, when you start to be in your 30s and 40s, when you start to see that, hey, you know what, Uncle Sam loved my participation in taxes, that's where you're going to be like, how can I save more, right? Let's face it, Uncle Sam is an uncle, but that's the least favorite uncle, right? So how to leverage some of the tax strategies? Real estate is one way, but that's not the only way. You can also be an LPs. You limited partnership. You can also get into other businesses. You can also do other business that you can be participating or non-participating. At the end of the day, everybody taxes is different. The best way is really just to understand how to make your money save more by your side, making sure that you're not going to give up too much to Uncle Sam. Those are important. And here, a lot of time people ask me, how am I having too much savings? Am I having too little savings? Am I saving enough? So here's a rule of thumb. Once again, if you are here, high five. If you're above, celebrate. If you're not, I hope that today is the day you start to aim for that little bit of pieces of gold. So in your 30s, most of the average American in the US would actually have 1 time of their annual salary. Couple, just both of them combined times 1. 40s, 3 times. In your 50s is 5 times. You're like, Kelvin, why that 10 years you're able to do 3 times more? Then we talk about this thing called rule of 72. Rule 72. It simply means that at what percentage of interest you are able to double up your money in the soonest time frame. So as a rule of thumb, if let's say you average 7%, you'll be able to double up your money in 10.25 years, 10 and a quarter years. You'll be able to double your money. So let's say you are having 100,000 in the next 10 years, you're 200. In the next 10 years, from 200, it can grow to 400, 800, 1.6 in the next 40 years, just to give you a sense of how that worked. That is not including your monthly savings, your monthly investment. If you have that, you're going to go even exponentially faster. And obviously the 30 to 40s from 1 time to 3 times, that include your additional savings, your monthly contributions, and what you're currently doing with it. That's the reason why it's 1 to 3 times you can jump up. Because if let's say from 7%, which is 10 years, to 10%, congratulations, that money can double in less than 6 years.
Before we move on to the next slide, Annie dropped a really nice, really big bomb in the comments that, you know, I didn't include in the life stage considerations, and that's the potential of divorce. And, you know, a lot of women, their life trajectory is largely influenced by the partner they partner up with. So if you chose wrong, you didn't sign a prenup, what are some financial strategies and tactics that you can do when you're on defensive mode?
Great question. And that's the reason why I say the first thing is making sure that your 3 values are aligned. That will actually be a first line of defense. But things happen, things change, unfortunately. If let's say you and your significant other thinking about getting married, I would normally just say that, hey, you know what? Pre-married, you want to consider a prenup. And the prenup would normally consider is like, this is what my family have potentially going to be receiving those. And this has nothing to do with my significant other. I want to protect my family assets and my personal business interests, if you have any. Then those are the things that I would just say have an open conversation with your significant others, just to make sure that you're okay with this part of the money in the future. If let's say is going to consider it as our part, will ever not going to go to you if things don't work out between us. If you have a very direct conversation and very open and honest, I don't really see, based on my clientele, any problem working on the prenup. As a matter of fact, most of my clients, when I suggest this to them, they are very open and they are very much want to be on the same page. Usually, from what I'm seeing, things gonna start to get very muddy, is because they don't really want to talk about it and they afraid things gonna go under. That's the time that a lot of time that's the worst that could ever begin. Now,
sorry. Do you advise couples when they're engaged? Do you see that, or they usually come to you after they're married? Because this is a good pre-flop strategy, pre-marriage. Sorry, brought the poker. But yeah, like pre-marriage, do the prenup. Do they just go to a attorney, or do they also go to you as well?
Yeah, so a lot of time it is better for you to, before you sign the actual marriage, or when you're engaged, you buy the big rock. In between that time to the time you guys get married, that's the time you want to talk about this. Now, having your own wealth management advisor or having your own family counsel, that gonna help a lot. Simply because all these things, a lot of time people don't really talk about, they don't even know how to get the info from. What I would suggest is that you really want to talk to whoever has been financially advising you to really understand the ins and outs and the pros and cons. Case in point, real life scenario, one of my clients last year got engaged, and he's like, Kelvern, I have a very happy news. I got engaged, and we're thinking of getting married next year. But at the same time, there are things that I want to iron out together with you. I want to make sure I am crossing all I's, dotting all T's. What can I do? So I explained to him, is like, hey, you have a business interest, and unfortunately, you also have business partners. And if anything, you want to make sure that, and you have more than 100 employees that work under you. If anything, I want to make sure that you understand, if things don't work out in the future, you and your respective others will not be complicated in this implication of you and your significant others. So that is something that I would propose you to speak with your significant others and making sure that she understands where you're coming from. So he took my advice. He talked to her, and she's very accepting. And that's where they actually come to me both together. It's like, where can I actually get this process done? And I actually suggested our outside partner just to make sure that both of them represented by different attorneys and all of them having that interest to be checked in when they actually sign the paperwork, so that everything is fair and square.
Thanks, Kelvern. I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat that are very specific to your individual situation. So just putting a big disclaimer out there, the intention of in case you just dropped in later, the intention of this presentation is to keep it super high level in general. We don't want to like disclose people's personal information. So if you have really specific questions, nuanced to your situation, Kelvern has graciously offered to do a consult, right? Kelvern, I'll let you reiterate, your intention there, so they know to reach out to you.
Yes. So once again, repeat of disclaimer. One, I'm a certified financial planner. I want to make sure that I have a fiduciary duty, even though that we are not a clientele engagements. I just want to make sure I have your best interest at heart. So if you have anything that you want to ask specifically to your situation, please do not ask in the open dialogue for privacy and security purposes, but you can always reach out to our team where I am able to do a 15 to 30-minute consult, and everything that you want to discuss, we can have an open dialogue, which is private and confidential. But if let's say it's like, Kelvern, I have a situation, I want to ask for your opinion, and that's general, absolutely, Anita, Tiffany, and I would be more than happy to discuss that together.
Great. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So we're now at the end of the road. When age 60 to age 120, because that Ali Wong joke is that Asian women live to 200 years old. They'll live forever. So I have called this when you're amo to ancient. What are your SARE Ladies lifestyle considerations? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, amo. Is that a slang? Is that a bad word to say? Kelvern, do you know? I've heard it my whole life when my dad's sorry. My dad sees an old lady crossing the street with the red bags and the and doing Tai Chi in the park. He's like, look at all those amos.
Well, I'm not so sure about that part. Just like you, I heard it all the time too. But yeah, so I just gonna say that a lot of time, age and old and young, for me, number one, full disclaimer, I really personally think that is a very relative subject, okay? People in the 80s can still think that they're young. As a matter of fact, if you think about this, Mickey Mouse is actually 80 plus years old, right? Mickey Mouse. But at the same time, you always have this young at heart, right? For this young at heart. For me, based on my experience, I think that the average American female is actually live up to 89 point something years. I cut it off at 89, okay? Some actually live longer to the 90s. Unexpectedly for men, if any of you guys out there, if kids are like, what about man? Male is actually 6 years younger, is actually 83. That's the average life expectancy for men. If you're in your 60s to 70s, I was going to say that that is relatively young. And that is actually the best is this age group, respectively for me and my client. The reason is that this is the time where actually at the top of the average, you already climb up to the peak. And this is the time for you to enjoy the sunset, sunrise, and above the cloud. Joy and life is all here for you all. If you know how to make your accumulation value grow in your 30s to your 50s. Here, you're thinking about, hey, my retirement planning, my estate planning, we want to make sure that all I's and T's are dotted and crossed, not giving anything to the Uncle Sam, but to my intended beneficiary, right? So rediscovery, a lot of time when I speak to my client who get into the retirement age around the 60s, a lot of them actually rediscover their love, passions, and different things. So I just want to make sure that I say one more time, money is just a mean to your goal. Rediscover that goal to make it a life well lived is actually the most important thing. I always tell people, you having millions and millions of dollars and you are not living fruitfully, you're, as a for lack of a better word, you are not successful. As a matter of fact, it's pretty sad, right? I just want to make sure that having that money itself channel all your energy to actually repurpose your life to make it a life well lived is actually the most crucial things when it comes to enjoyment and financial planning. And then the next thing, obviously, we start to look into Social Security, Medicare, tax deferred, tax-free, tax planning, real estates, right? So all those things actually are interconnected. Sometimes some people also ask me, it's like, Kelvin, should I take Social Security at 62? Famous questions among the Asian, okay? And should I take it all the way to 70s? The questions now becomes, it depends kind of answer, simply because it really depends on your tax bracket. It really depends on what you've been doing, your tax deferred, tax free, and tax planning. Because unfortunately, Medicare, when you're actually able to get at 65, general knowledge, it actually depends on the cost. It actually depends on your taxable income. A lot of people don't really notice. They think that Medicare is free, which it is because Part A is free, but Part B is not. Part B is actually depends on your taxable income. It can go up to $170 something to all the way to $500 plus, 4.5 times more every month for the next 20, 30 years. On average, if you are able to pinpoint it correctly, you could have a potential savings around $200,000 to $300,000. That's the reason why having a tax planning in your 30s and 50s can actually help you more in your 60s to your 80s. And then the average savings on the 60s, 70s, 80s is really the average of your income, 7 times, 9 times, and also 11 times. Now, having all this said, another thing I want to point out is that real estate itself, full disclosure, I'm also a real estate developer on the side, and my wife is also a partner of a construction company. And I am with Rick in the Midas Wealth as a wealth management advisor. We just want to make sure that everybody understand that in real estate, you have typical 1031. There's a lot of depreciation and write-off. And even in your retiring at 60s, 70s, you have all those rental income. You all can actually think about having that to turn it into potentially an active income. And then that you can actually do more either for yourself, for your children, or even your grandchildren. There's a lot more strategies. But obviously today, I don't want to get into granular single thing. I just want to make sure that you all understand. Make sure that you have a life well lived. And I'm just gonna end with my favorite quote, and this is by Robert F. Kennedy. In one of his famous speech at University of Kansas, he actually say that the GDP, the gross national products, does not allow for the health of our children, quality of their education, or the joy of the play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our health debate, integrity of public officials. It measures neither our wits nor our courage, neither our wisdom or learning, neither our compassion or devotions to our country. It measures everything in short except that which makes life worthwhile. So once again, money is a byproduct. I want you to understand that what takes you have that live well, and money is to support that. Finding your why is actually more crucial than what you're currently doing.
That's beautiful. And that wraps it up for Kelvern's presentation. We can send the slides. All right. All right. We're going to open up to Q&A now. I'm going to cherry pick questions from the chat that are very high level. And then again, for those of you joining late, if they're the really specific question spots in the interest of protecting your privacy, because this is a recording, please reach out to Kelvern directly. Kelvern, why don't you drop your contact info in the chat right now?
Sure. I'm not as tech savvy. I'll try my best to see if I can find it.
It's the little chat bubble all the way on the right. You're going to see it's the second to last icon. There's a triangle, square, and circle. So the one right before that.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put it to the my Midas Wealth at nm.com. So anybody that wants to reach out, please email to midaswealth at nm.com, Nancy Mary, and Michael, my associate, will be able to schedule a 15 to 30 minute either phone call or Zoom, and then we can discuss more. Once again, full disclosure for SARE members, initial consultations, I will waive the consultation fee. Don't worry about it. I just want to make sure that any questions for today that you have to protect your privacy, please don't ask in this chat.
So I just see a great question in the chat that is high level. It says, Kelvern, it seems like your service covers a lot of tax knowledge. Would we need to consult a CPA in combo with your service to make sense of it all?
Yes and yes. So one thing about Midas Wealth is that we are a wealth management firm. A lot of time we got asked, like, what's the difference between what you guys do versus an investment advisor versus a life insurance agent down the block. For us, everybody in my team actually have our different credentials. I'm a CFP, we have CFAs, RCPs, MBAs, analysts, and collectively our experience is more than 100 years together. My service include tax planning strategy, retirement investments, cash flow, and also understanding your risk management. Now, the second layout is that, do you need to consult a CPA? Yes, absolutely. The best way for me to say that we are more of a strategist, and your CPA could be either the lowest tier is what we call order taker, where you actually give them your tax stuff and then they do the spit out a tax return. Respectfully, they're more like a tax preparer. Nothing good or bad. If let's say you are making like about 50 to 100,000, you really don't need to have a lot of tax situation, and I think that will actually service very beautifully for your taxes. However, if you start to get into like the $2, $3, $4, $5 million of income and you need to pay 6 figures of taxes, that's the time you want to start to think about what is the better way for you to minimize strategies of your taxes legally, of course, and that's where your CPA is going to help. Now, CPA itself is almost like a doctor. I always want to make this distinction. You are not going to see a gynecologist to do a heart operation, right? So it's the same thing. A CPA that specializes working with a business owner may or may not necessarily help with real estate professionals. If somebody who is in a real estate developer will not be working with somebody, the CPA that work predominantly with low income wages, taxes filing. So I just want to make sure that your CPA works well. And one of the things that we do, we have to review your taxes to let you know that whether it is something that we think your CPA is doing a good job, average job, or we really want you to consider second opinion to change your CPA.
I'll also add to Kelvern's note there. You should also sync up with your real estate agent and advisor, because that helps you keep you accountable on building your real estate portfolio per your tax advisor and wealth advisor's recommendation. And we see this a lot where, your advisor will tell you to do something, but you can only lead a horse to water, right? So and to that note, we are subtle Asian real estate ladies. We are very proactive about things, but life gets in the way sometimes. So it's helpful to have someone coaching you on the side and helping you move that real estate piece along, because real estate is the most time, like that's where you see time is like hugest returns. And when we're talking about financial planning, right, I think if we talk about the real estate side of things, if you buy something, if you're fortunate enough to buy something in your 20s and 30s, and Annie had mentioned, like, there are parents that help fund their children's down payment, so they have a little bit of an edge there in establishing their foundation. 30 years down the line, you're going to be able to realize that equity on that real estate asset. Because we know how neighborhoods just change. Like, they tell you if you're going to resell within like under 5 years, you might experience loss. But 30 years out down the line, when you're in your 60s and you want to sell off everything or just hand it over to your kids, that's when you're going to see that big return on the real estate investment side of things.
100%.
All right, let me see what else there is. Okay, there's another question. What do you say to people these days obsessed with retiring early? Fire, fat, fire, in parentheses. I've not heard of that term. Have you heard of that, Kelvern? Sounds weird.
The FIRE, for anybody who may or may not know, the term is called financial independence, retire early. They're actually fat FIRE and lean FIRE. Yeah. According to that point itself, is really people who use the least amount of what they spend right now instead of like the 50, 30, and 20 rule. This is more like a 20-80 rule. They actually put most of their money to invest so that they can actually retire early. Once again, everybody should actually understand what's your goals in life. If let's say you want to do fire, so be it. Just making sure that you know exactly how to get there. Once again, money is a mean to your goals. Making sure that you understand and you draw up a map how to get there. That's all good. Now, whether it is fat fire or lean fire, I was going to say this. If let's say your cash flow, your monthly cash flow enable you to do that, okay, and that's what you have the preservations and also the grit to do it, by all means, do so. Because at the end of the day, you accomplishing what you want in life, that to me is a very successful life. I don't want people to think about, hey, you know what, I want to do this, but this is not something that I find interest in. Then obviously that is not something that you want to do. Then don't do it. Don't force yourself. Simply because your next door peer or your friends is talking about it, it may or may not be suitable for you. Just find out what you're comfortable with and what you want to strive in life.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kelvern.
Thank you for tuning in to the SARE Ladies podcast hosted by Anita Wong and Tiffany Lee.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review or follow SARE Ladies on Spotify and Instagram. And also click on our show notes to subscribe to our newsletters to stay on top of our news and upcoming events. Until next time, Pod Squatters.